Hello, we will be now moving on to Chapter 2, Strategy, Organization, Design, and Effectiveness. We're now on Slide 2. There's a graph there that discusses the top management role in organization, direction, design, and effectiveness. We have in the top square, external environment, the opportunities, threats, uncertainty, and resource availability, impacts the CEO and top management, which leads into strategic intent, defining the mission, official goals of the organization, select operational goals, competitive strategies, which of course impacts organizational design, the structural form, learning versus efficiency, information and central systems, production technology, human resource policies, organizational culture, and inter-organizational linkages. That goes back and forth between strategic intent and organizational design. Organizational design then flows into effectiveness, outcomes, goal attainment, resources, efficiency, strategic constituents, and then it flows into internal situations, which deals with the strengths and weaknesses, distinctive competencies, leadership style, and past performance. Now, we mentioned opportunities and threats and strengths and weaknesses. Just to quickly recap for those of you who may not be aware of what a SWOT analysis is. A SWOT analysis is an analytical tool that deals with the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats that face an organization. The strengths and weaknesses are indicators or indications of internal strengths and weaknesses. Opportunities and threats are factors in the external environment. We now move on to slide number 3. Organizational purpose. Strategic intent is the organization's energies and resources are directed toward a focused, unifying, and compelling goal. We have the mission, competitive advantage, and core competencies, operating goals, overall performance resources, market, employee development, innovation, change, and productivity. Slide number 3 is an example of a mission statement for CVS. We are a pharmacy innovation company. Our strategy, reinventing pharmacy. Our purpose, helping people on their path to better health. Our values, innovation, collaboration, caring, integrity, and accountability. The next slide, we are now moving on to the next slide where we have that pyramid, organizational operating goals, overall performance goals, resource goals, market goals, innovation and change goals, productivity goals, employee development goals. If you'd also like to see a great organizational mission statement, look at Google's, which talks about organizing the world's information. Now we're at slide 6, goals, types, and purposes. You have in the external, the outer, the blue circle, mission, official goals, communication, purpose, and values, bestows legitimacy. Operating goals provide employees direction and motivation, offer decision guidelines, define standards of performance. Now we move on to slide 7, selecting strategy and design. A strategy is a plan for interacting with the competitive environment. There's also a cluster of decisions. Managers must select specific strategy design. Models exist to aid in formulating strategy. Porter's 5 forces, Miles and Snow's strategy typology. Porter's 5 forces, differentiation strategy. We're now in slide number 8. Differentiation strategy to distinguish products or services from others in the industry. Low-cost leadership, increase market share by keeping costs low compared to competitors. Organizations may choose to focus broad or narrow in reaching multiple markets. Now, we move on to Porter's competitive strategies. In differentiation, you have on the left side of the slide, focus on uniqueness. Examples, broad scope, Apple. Examples, narrow scope, Edward Jones Investments. Low-cost leadership, focus on efficiency and low cost. Examples, broad scope, Walmart. Example, narrow scope, Allegiant Travel. Managers choose which to emphasize. Now we move on to the next slide. Slide number 10, Miles and Snow's strategy typology. Managers should seek to formulate strategy that matches the demands of the external environment. Prospector. Learning, orientation, flexible, fluid, decentralized structure, values, creativity, risk-taking, and innovation. Very, very important if you want to get ahead. If you're a micromanager, you're going to hamper performance and hamper the growth of the organization. Defender, efficiency orientation, centralized authority, and tight cost control. Emphasis on production, efficiency, and of course, low overhead. Analyzer, balances efficiency and learning, tight cost control with flexibility and adaptability. Emphasis on creativity, research, risk-taking for innovation. Reactor, no clear organizational approach. Design characteristics may shift abruptly depending on current current needs. And you have to be very careful not to always be reacting. Sometimes you have no choice, but if you're always putting out fires, you have to start questioning your management capabilities and approach. We now move on to slide 11, how strategy affects organizational design. Strategy impacts internal organization characteristics. Managers must design the organization to support the firm's competitive strategy. The strategy can never, ever be contradicted by policies and procedures. We now move on to slide 12. Organization design outcomes of strategy. Strategy, for example, differentiation. The organizational design for that. Learning orientation acts in a flexible, loosely knit way with strong horizontal coordination, strong capability in research, values and builds a mechanism for customer intimacy, rewards employees' creativity, risk-taking, and innovation. Strategy, low-cost leadership, organization design, efficiency, orientation, strong central authority, tight cost control with frequent detailed control reports. Standard operating procedures, high efficient procurement and distribution systems. Procurement is purchasing. Close supervision, routine task, limited employee empowerment, which of course will be an issue because especially if you're a customer service person and you have very, very little empowerment, and when somebody calls them with an issue, you're not as helpful as you could be. Now let's look at Miles and Slow's strategy typology. Strategy, prospector, organizational design, learning orientation, flexible, fluid, decentralized. Strong capability in research. Strategy, defender, organizational design, efficiency, orientation, centralized authority, tight cost control, emphasis on production efficiency, low overhead, close supervision, little employee empowerment. Strategy, analyzer, organizational design, balances efficiency and learning, tight cost control with flexibility and adaptability. Efficient production for stable product lines, emphasis on creativity, research, risk-taking for innovation. Strategy, reactor, organizational design, no clear organizational approach. Design characteristics may shift abruptly, depending on current needs, which again we mentioned is not as efficient as it should be. We now move into slide 13, the puzzle pieces. Contingency factors affecting organizational design. Strategy, environment, technology, size, and the life cycle of the organization or the product that it represents, and the culture. We now move on to the next slide, slide number 14. Assessing organizational effectiveness. Effectiveness takes into consideration a range of variables at both the organization and the departmental levels. Now, in effectiveness, we have to make sure that the goals are appropriate for the organization. Efficiency looks at how you took the resources to get to those goals. Efficiency relates to the working of the organization and the amount of resources used to produce output and how well it was utilized. Measuring effectiveness, the goal approach, the research-based approach, the internal process approach, looking at how the internal processes work well with each other, and the strategic constituents approach. Indicators of organizational effectiveness, meeting deadlines, timely material and equipment acquisitions. We are now on slide 15. Quality of product or service, customer satisfaction and complaints, market share compared to competitors, employee training and development, which is very important for ensuring that employees are always able to rise to the occasion, and of course making them feel that you're investing in them, staying within the budget, shareholder satisfaction, reduction in costs, supply chain delays or improvements, productivity, dollars spent to each unit of output, employee engagement, achieving sales targets, product development, cycle time, reduction in cycle time, numbers of hours, days, and so on to complete tasks, which is very important. Now we look at slide 16. There's a graph over there which talks about the resource-based approach, internal process approach, and goal approach. In the resource-based approach, you have suppliers and creditors. You deal with the organizational one, you have employees, owners, and government. That's the internal process, internal activities and processes. And the goal approach, we deal with customers, community, and the external. But all these things in the external environment are all impacted both by the resources, the organizational processes, and product and service outputs. They're not separate. They're all impacted by them. Now, we move on to slide 17, an integrated effectiveness model. Competing value models tries to balance concern with various parts of the organization. The human relation emphasis incorporates the value of internal focus and flexible structure. Human relations is key, as learned in Principles of Management with the Hawthorne Effect. 4 approaches to effectiveness values. You have focus and structure. You have human relations emphasis, primary goals, human resource development, sub-goals, cohesion, morale, and training. Then you have internal process emphasis, which is primary goal, stability, equilibrium, sub-goals, information management, communication, which is so important. Then you have open system emphasis, primary goals, growth and resource acquisitions, sub-goals, flexibility, readiness, external evaluation. Rational goal emphasis, primary goals, productivity, efficiency, profit, sub-goals, planning, and goal setting. So you have on the outside of the squares, you have structure, flexibility, internal, focus, control, and external. Please look at the slide for yourself for a better explanation. Now we move on to the next slide. The next slide has an effectiveness value for two organizations. You have two organizations superimposed on each other. Two organizations focus on different things. Some organizations are more on the human relations emphasis, some are more into internal process. You could look at the slide for yourself. Now, that was slide 19. Now we're up to slide 20. Design essentials. Strategic intent includes competitive advantage and core competence. Strategies may include many techniques. Organizational effectiveness must be assessed. Constant assessment is vital to make sure that you're staying on track. Design essentials. No guaranteed measure provides an unequivocal assessment of performance. No approach is suitable for every organization. Every organization needs to constantly revisit things. You can look to the external environment for best practices, but you always have to make sure those best practices are somehow related to your internal capabilities. Thank you. That was chapter 2.